Fame, fortune, and the roar of the crowd could not protect them from the silent toll of cigarettes and relentless stress. Behind the bright lights of America's favorite sport lies a darker truth. 15 baseball legends whose glory ended too soon, their stories serving as haunting reminders of how pressure and addiction can quietly destroy greatness. Number 1. Babe Ruth. On August 16, 1948, the world of baseball stood still as the Sultan of Swat took his final breath in New York City. He was 53 years old, his body weakened after years of living life at full speed. For millions of fans, Babe Ruth was not just a player. He was a living legend who turned baseball into America's greatest show. Yet behind his larger-than-life image hid a quieter truth, one shaped by smoke-filled rooms, late nights, and unrelenting pressure. Ruth's fame came at a time when tobacco was not just common, it was celebrated. Cigarette ads used his image, and it was not unusual to see him with a cigar between his fingers. Doctors of that era had not yet warned the public about the dangers of tobacco, and Ruth enjoyed it without guilt. Over the decades, this habit began to take a toll on his health. In 1946, he was diagnosed with nasopharyngeal cancer, a rare and aggressive disease that attacked his throat and sinuses. The man whose booming voice once filled stadiums now struggled to speak. Despite the pain, Ruth refused to hide. He appeared at public events, smiling for crowds that still adored him. On June 13, 1948, he made one final public appearance at Yankee Stadium for Babe Ruth Day. Wrapped in a long coat, he leaned on a bat for support as 60,000 fans rose to their feet in silence and tears. It was both a farewell and a reminder of how deeply he was loved. Medical treatments were limited at the time. Surgeons attempted experimental procedures, but the cancer had spread too far. Those close to Ruth spoke of his constant exhaustion, his voice reduced to a whisper, and his inability to eat solid food. Still, he kept his sense of humor, often joking with hospital staff. The disease, worsened by decades of tobacco use and the endless stress of fame, eventually overcame him that summer. When the news of his death broke, newspapers across America printed black borders around his photo. Fans lined the streets of New York to say goodbye. His coffin rested at Yankee Stadium, where tens of thousands filed past in silence. Babe Ruth's story remains both triumphant and tragic, a reminder that even the brightest stars can fade, not from lack of greatness, but from the quiet damage of habits once thought harmless. Number 2. Joe DiMaggio. On March 8, 1999, the world lost one of baseball's most graceful icons. He passed away in Hollywood, Florida, at the age of 84 after a long battle with lung cancer. For generations, Joe DiMaggio had been the symbol of elegance on and off the field. His record 56-game hitting streak still stands as one of the greatest achievements in sports history. Yet behind that calm and confident smile was a man carrying years of exhaustion, loneliness, and the hidden toll of tobacco. Throughout his career, DiMaggio was known for his quiet discipline. He avoided controversy, kept his emotions guarded, and demanded perfection from himself every time he stepped onto the field. But the pressure to live up to his own legend was immense. Away from the cameras, he often smoked, a habit common among players of his era. Cigarettes were seen as a form of relaxation, a way to cope with fame and stress. The connection between smoking and lung cancer was not widely discussed then, and DiMaggio continued the routine for decades. By the late 1990s, his health had begun to fail. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, a disease that slowly drained his strength. Those close to him described a man who faced his illness with the same stoicism that defined his career. Even as he struggled to breathe, he never complained publicly. His final months were spent surrounded by family and the few friends he still trusted. Despite his illness, he remained mentally sharp, often reflecting on his playing days with the Yankees and the legacy he would leave behind. On that quiet March morning, America said farewell to a man who had become part of its soul. The country mourned not just a player but a symbol of grace, dignity, and timeless class. Thousands gathered at his funeral, and tributes poured in from across the world. Newspapers called him the last link to baseball's golden age. The image of Joe DiMaggio remains forever frozen in time, walking confidently toward the plate, cigarette smoke drifting somewhere behind him, unaware of how that simple habit would one day claim his life. His story stands as a reminder that greatness does not make one invincible, and that even legends can fall to the quiet consequences of stress and the choices made in their most private moments. Number 3. Tony Gwynn. On June 16, 2014, baseball lost one of its most respected and beloved figures. Tony Gwynn passed away in Poway, California, at the age of 54 after a long and public battle with salivary gland cancer. His death shocked the sports world, not only because of his age, but because of what caused his illness. For years, Gwynn himself spoke openly about the dangers of smokeless tobacco, a habit that had quietly followed him through much of his career. Tony Gwynn was known as Mr. Padre, the heart of San Diego baseball, a man who defined consistency and grace at the plate. He was a craftsman, studying every pitch, perfecting every swing, and spending hours in the batting cage long after others had left. But behind his success was a daily struggle with stress, expectations, and the silent damage of tobacco use. He began using smokeless tobacco in his early playing days, believing it helped him focus and stay calm under pressure. For years, he saw it as harmless, a small ritual before games, shared by many teammates. In 2010, Gwynn noticed a small lump inside his cheek. Doctors later diagnosed it as cancer of the salivary gland. He immediately connected it to his longtime use of chewing tobacco. Determined to raise awareness, he spoke openly to reporters and young athletes about the risks he had ignored. His honesty made headlines, turning his personal battle into a powerful lesson for others. During treatment, Gwynn remained active in the San Diego community and continued coaching at San Diego State University. Even as the illness weakened him, he focused on teaching young players discipline, respect, and love for the game. Those close to him said he never lost his optimism or his gentle spirit. When the end came in that June morning, tributes poured in from across the nation. Former teammates, coaches, and fans remembered his infectious smile and the kindness that defined him. Petco Park, his home field filled with flowers, jerseys, and handwritten notes from fans who had grown up watching him play. Tony Gwynn's legacy extends far beyond his batting titles and records. He left behind a message that still echoes in every ballpark, that no victory is worth risking one's health, and that even heroes must face the hidden consequences of choices made in the name of calm and control. Number 4. Bob Uecker. On June 2nd, 2025, the voice of Milwaukee fell silent. Bob Uecker passed away at the age of 90 in his hometown, leaving behind a legacy that stretched far beyond baseball. Known as Mr. Baseball, he entertained generations with his humor, storytelling, and love for the game. Yet few knew the toll that decades of stress, long travel schedules, and a lifetime of smoking had taken on his body. Bob Uecker's journey began as a catcher in the 1960s, a role that demanded toughness more than talent. He often joked about his modest playing career, saying he was famous for being a legend of mediocrity. That self-deprecating humor made him beloved, first by teammates and later by fans when he turned to broadcasting. For more than 50 years, he became the voice of the Milwaukee Brewers, painting the game with words that made listeners feel like they were in the stands beside him. Behind the laughter, Uecker battled habits formed in the early days of his career. Like many players of his generation, smoking was part of the culture. Clubhouses were often filled with smoke, and stress relief came in the form of quick cigarettes between innings or long nights on the road. As the years passed, the habit followed him into the broadcast booth. Though he lived with humor and optimism, his body carried the burden of those choices. In his later years, Uecker faced growing health problems. He underwent multiple surgeries and periods of rest, but always returned to the microphone. Fans admired his resilience, unaware that behind the cheerful voice was a man quietly fighting fatigue and pain. The lung cancer that would eventually claim his life was diagnosed late, and though treatment slowed its progress, it could not erase the damage already done. When the news of his passing broke that summer morning, tributes poured in from every corner of the baseball world. Players, coaches, and broadcasters spoke of his kindness, his quick wit, and his ability to make everyone feel like family. Stadiums across the country held moments of silence, and Milwaukee draped his broadcast booth in flowers and memories. Bob Uecker's story reminds the world that even laughter cannot always hide the quiet consequences of stress and old habits. His humor may have eased the hearts of millions, but in the end, his health told the truth he often masked with a smile. Number 5. Curt Flood. On January 20th, 1997, Curt Flood passed away in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 59. The cause was throat cancer, the result of years of smoking and unrelenting emotional pressure. To the world, he was a revolutionary figure who changed baseball forever. To those who knew him, he was also a man burdened by the weight of justice, isolation, and inner turmoil. Curt Flood was not just a talented center fielder. He was the player who challenged Major League Baseball's reserve clause, a rule that tied players to their teams indefinitely. In 1969, he refused a trade from the St. Louis Cardinals to the Philadelphia Phillies and took his protest all the way to the Supreme Court. It was a bold act of defiance, one that made him a hero to some and an outcast to others. The emotional toll of that decision followed him for the rest of his life. After leaving the game, Flood struggled to find peace. His reputation in baseball was damaged, and his financial stability collapsed. He lived with the constant stress of being misunderstood. Friends recalled his habit of chain smoking, often lighting one cigarette from the end of another as he spoke about the pressures that never left him. The tobacco soothed his nerves but slowly destroyed his throat and lungs. By the early 1990s, his voice had grown weak and raspy. When doctors diagnosed him with throat cancer, the illness had already advanced. Flood approached the disease with quiet dignity, refusing to ask for pity. He spent his final years reflecting on his choices, proud of his stand for player rights even as his body weakened. The same fire that made him fearless on the field burned in him until the very end. On that winter day in 1997, baseball lost more than a player. It lost a man who had dared to challenge a system built on silence. Teammates and journalists later said that the stress of his battle with the league and his lifelong smoking habit had both taken their toll. In the end, Curt Flood's voice, once a symbol of courage, was silenced by the very habit that had carried him through his loneliest years. His legacy remains, a bittersweet reminder of strength, sacrifice, and the quiet price of change. Number 6. Earl Weaver. On January 19, 2013, the baseball world woke to shocking news. Earl Weaver, the fiery and brilliant manager who had led the Baltimore Orioles to greatness, passed away on a cruise ship in the Caribbean Sea at the age of 82. The cause was a heart attack, brought on after years of tension, sleepless nights, and the constant pressure of competition. Behind his sharp humor and famous temper, Weaver had long carried the weight of stress and the quiet damage of heavy smoking. Earl Weaver was unlike any other manager of his time. He never played professionally at the major league level, yet his mind for the game was unmatched. From 1968 to 1982, and again in 1985 to 1986, he commanded the Orioles with a mix of discipline, statistics, and raw emotion. His confrontations with umpires were legendary, his arguments explosive, his drive relentless. Fans loved his fire, but few realized how deeply that intensity consumed him. Throughout his career, Weaver was rarely seen without a cigarette. It was his constant companion through long games, post-game interviews, and team flights. Players joked that the smoke around his office was as thick as a Baltimore summer. He once admitted that the habit helped him cope with the stress of managing, though doctors warned him for years about the risks. By the time he retired, decades of tobacco use and high-pressure living had already left their mark on his heart. In the years after baseball, Weaver remained a beloved figure. He appeared at events, gave interviews, and shared memories with humor and candor. Yet his health quietly declined. Friends noticed his breathing had become heavier, his once booming voice quieter. On that January morning in 2013, he collapsed in his cabin shortly after dinner. Medical personnel on board tried to revive him, but his body could not endure the strain. News of his death spread quickly across the country. Tributes poured in from players and fans who had once feared him, now calling him a genius and a father figure. The Baltimore Orioles honored him by wearing his number 4 on their uniforms throughout the following season. Earl Weaver's life was a story of brilliance and fire, but also a reminder that relentless pressure and old habits can dim even the brightest spark long before its time. Number 7. Hank Bauer. On February 9, 2007, Hank Bauer passed away at his home in Shawnee Mission, Kansas, at the age of 84. The cause was lung cancer, a disease that had slowly taken hold after years of heavy smoking and unrelenting pressure from a lifetime in baseball. His death marked the end of an era for fans who remembered him as both a tough player and a respected manager. Hank Bauer's story was one of strength and grit. Before baseball, he served in the United States Marine Corps during World War II, surviving several major battles and earning 2 Purple Hearts. That experience shaped his character. When he returned home, nothing on the baseball field seemed too hard or too frightening. He joined the New York Yankees in the late 1940s and became one of the cornerstones of the team's golden age. With his square jaw and steady confidence, he embodied the image of an American hero. Behind that image, however, was a man who lived with constant stress and carried the scars of war both on his body and in his mind. Smoking became a daily habit, a way to calm his nerves and silence the echoes of his past. In the locker rooms of the 1950s, cigarettes were everywhere. No one questioned the risks, and Bauer himself often lit one before stepping out to the field. Over time, the toll grew quietly. After his playing days, Bauer transitioned into managing, most notably leading the Baltimore Orioles to their first World Series title in 1966. The stress of leadership reignited the same tension he had felt as a soldier. He was known for his fiery temper and his relentless standards. Friends and colleagues recalled that even during victories, he rarely relaxed. The combination of lifelong smoking and chronic stress began to weaken his body in his later years. By the early 2000s, Bauer's health declined rapidly. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, a battle he faced with the same stoicism that had defined his life. Surrounded by family, he remained proud of his legacy and at peace with his choices. When he passed away on that February morning, former players, veterans, and fans across the nation mourned together. Hank Bauer's life was a testament to courage and endurance, but also a reflection of how the habits formed in the pursuit of calm can one day claim even the strongest hearts. Number 8. Jerry Remy. On October 30th, 2021, the city of Boston lost one of its most beloved sports figures. Jerry Remy passed away at the age of 68 after a long fight with lung cancer. His passing marked the end of a career that had spanned more than 4 decades, from player to broadcaster, and his voice had become as familiar to Red Sox fans as the sound of the crowd at Fenway Park. Jerry Remy grew up in Massachusetts, a local kid who made it to the big leagues. He began his major league career with the California Angels in the mid-1970s before joining the Boston Red Sox, where he became a fan favorite for his hustle and determination. He played the game with quiet intensity, always giving his best despite injuries and constant pressure. But like many players of his era, the stress of competition and the culture of the clubhouse often led to one common habit: smoking. It was seen as a way to ease nerves and unwind after games. By the time Remy retired from playing in 1984, his body was worn down, yet his connection to baseball never faded. He moved into broadcasting and quickly became a household name. His sharp wit, honesty, and warmth made him one of the most recognizable voices in sports. But behind the cheerful commentary was a private struggle. Years of smoking had taken a toll on his lungs, and in 2008, he was diagnosed with cancer. He underwent treatment and, for a while, returned to the broadcast booth, determined to continue doing what he loved. Fans admired his resilience, unaware of how difficult the battle truly was. Over the next decade, the illness returned several times, forcing him to step away from the microphone to focus on recovery. Each time he came back, His smile and humor remained, even as his body weakened. On that autumn day in 2021, Jerry Remy's long battle came to an end. The Red Sox organization lowered their flags, and fans filled Fenway Park with flowers and signs reading, "Thank you, Remy." His empty chair in the broadcast booth was left untouched that night. Jerry Remy's life told a story of loyalty and perseverance, but it also carried a lesson about the lasting cost of habits once thought harmless, and how even heroes of the game are not immune to their quiet consequences. Number 9. Cal Ripken Sr. On March 25, 1999, the baseball community mourned the loss of a respected leader and mentor. Cal Ripken Sr. passed away in Aberdeen, Maryland, at the age of 63. The cause was lung cancer, a disease that had developed after decades of heavy smoking and long years of pressure in professional baseball. His death struck deeply within the Baltimore Orioles organization, where his name had become a symbol of loyalty and discipline. Cal Ripken Sr. was a baseball man in every sense. He began his journey with the Orioles in the 1950s, working his way from player to coach, then to manager. For nearly 4 decades, he shaped the team's identity through hard work and attention to detail. He was known as a teacher of fundamentals and a father figure to countless young players. His 2 sons, Cal Jr. and Billy, both grew up under his watchful eye and went on to play in the major leagues. But behind the steady voice and strict training methods was a man who carried enormous stress. Throughout his life, Ripken Sr. was rarely without a cigarette. It was part of his routine during games, practices, and long nights spent reviewing lineups and statistics. Those who knew him said the habit helped him stay calm amid the chaos of baseball. In the smoke-filled locker rooms of the 1960s and 70s, the dangers were little known or simply ignored. Over time, however, his health began to decline. His deep voice became hoarse, his energy waned, and breathing grew more difficult. When he was diagnosed with lung cancer in the late 1990s, Ripken Sr. faced it with quiet strength. He continued mentoring young players even as he underwent treatment, often appearing at the ballpark when he felt strong enough. His family stood beside him through every moment, watching as the man who had once been the foundation of their lives grew weaker. On that March morning, surrounded by loved ones, Cal Ripken Sr. took his final breath. News spread quickly through the baseball world. Players and coaches who had once trained under him shared stories of his guidance and unwavering standards. The Orioles honored him with black armbands for the rest of the season. Cal Ripken Sr.'s legacy endures not only through his famous sons, but through generations of players shaped by his dedication, his strength, and his quiet reminder that no leader is invincible to the toll of time and habit. Number 10. Mark Belanger. On October 6, 1998, the baseball world said goodbye to one of its quiet heroes. Mark Belanger passed away in New York City at the age of 54 after a battle with lung cancer. His death came as a painful shock to those who remembered him as the brilliant shortstop who helped define the Baltimore Orioles dynasty of the 1960s and 70s. Mark Belanger was never known for his hitting, but on defense, he was a master. His reflexes were lightning fast, his gloves steady, and his instincts unmatched. He won 8 Gold Glove awards and became the heart of one of the most disciplined infields in baseball history. Teammates called him the Blade, both for his tall, lean frame and his precision on the field. Yet off the diamond, his life was marked by quiet struggles, stress, and a habit that would one day cost him dearly. Like many players of his generation, Belanger smoked heavily. It began as a small comfort during his early days in the minor leagues, a way to relax after long bus rides and endless games. As the years passed, the habit deepened, becoming a steady companion through victories and losses. Friends recalled seeing him with a cigarette in hand even during post-game interviews. At the time, the health dangers were less understood, and smoking was seen as part of the culture, not a threat. After retiring in 1982, Belanger worked for the Major League Baseball Players Association, helping other players protect their rights and benefits. The job came with new pressures, long hours, travel, and the responsibility of speaking for hundreds of athletes. The same determination that made him a great player now kept him working tirelessly, even as his health began to falter. By the mid-1990s, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. The illness progressed quickly, and though he underwent treatment, his body weakened. Those close to him said he remained calm and private, rarely showing fear or self-pity. On that October day in 1998, surrounded by family, he passed away peacefully. The Orioles honored his memory with a moment of silence before their next game. Mark Belanger's story is one of quiet excellence and dedication, but also a reminder of how even the strongest discipline cannot always protect against the quiet harm of stress and long-forgotten habits. Number 11. Bill Tuttle. On July 27, 1998, former Major League outfielder Bill Tuttle passed away in Anoka, Minnesota, at the age of 70. His death followed a long and painful battle with oral cancer, a disease he directly linked to his decades-long use of smokeless tobacco. In the years leading to his passing, Tuttle became one of baseball's most outspoken voices against the very habit that had once seemed harmless to so many. Bill Tuttle's career began in the early 1950s, when he joined the Detroit Tigers. Known for his strong arm and fearless defense, he played more than a decade in the major leagues with the Tigers, Kansas City Athletics, and Minnesota Twins. Off the field, he was cheerful and talkative, often seen with a pouch of chewing tobacco tucked in his back pocket. At the time, tobacco use was woven into baseball culture. Players used it in dugouts, clubhouses, and even during games. Few understood the danger it posed, and Tuttle himself saw it as part of the sport's identity. After retiring in 1963, Tuttle continued to work in baseball, coaching and scouting. For years, his health seemed fine, until one day in the early 1990s when he noticed a small sore inside his mouth that refused to heal. Doctors diagnosed him with oral cancer, a form often associated with chewing tobacco. The news devastated him, but instead of hiding his condition, he chose to speak out. He began visiting schools, ballparks, and youth leagues, showing children the effects of his illness and warning them never to follow his example. As his condition worsened, Tuttle lost much of his jaw and struggled to speak, yet his message grew louder. His courage inspired medical groups and athletes to launch campaigns against tobacco use in sports. Even as he faced constant pain, he continued to meet with young players, telling them the truth about the habit that had taken so much from him. On that July morning in 1998, his fight came to an end. News of his passing spread quietly through the baseball community, where many still remembered his booming voice and kind spirit. Though Bill Tuttle's playing career was modest, his legacy became monumental. He turned personal tragedy into a mission of awareness, becoming a symbol of strength and redemption in a game once clouded by smoke and silence. Number 12. Fritz Peterson. On October 19, 2023, former New York Yankees pitcher Fritz Peterson passed away in Winona, Minnesota, at the age of 82. The cause was lung cancer, a disease he had battled for several years. His death brought back memories of one of baseball's most colorful and unconventional personalities, a man whose life was filled with both laughter and controversy, but who ultimately faced a quiet and difficult end brought on by years of smoking and stress. Fritz Peterson's career began with promise in the mid-1960s. As a left-handed pitcher for the New York Yankees, he earned a reputation for his control and composure on the mound. Fans admired his confidence, and teammates often spoke of his calm demeanor under pressure. But behind the easygoing charm was a man who lived with the tension of constant media attention and the burden of maintaining his performance in a sport where every mistake was magnified. Smoking became his companion during long road trips and sleepless nights, a habit he would later regret deeply. Peterson's name became famous in 1973 for reasons beyond baseball. That year, he and teammate Mike Kekich made headlines after publicly revealing that they had exchanged families, a decision that shocked fans and forever changed his reputation. The scandal created enormous pressure, and Peterson soon found himself under relentless public scrutiny. Though he continued pitching for several more seasons, the mental toll of the controversy left its mark. After retiring in the late 1970s, Peterson rebuilt his life away from the spotlight. He wrote books, made appearances at charity events, and often joked about his past. showing the humor that had always defined him. But his health began to decline with age. Years of smoking caught up to him, and doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer in the early 2020s. He faced the illness with courage, keeping his trademark sense of humor, even in the most difficult days. When he passed away on that October morning, tributes came from fans who remembered his honesty and charm. Many spoke not of scandal but of his kindness and generosity in his later years. Fritz Peterson's life was far from ordinary. It was a story of talent, mistakes, redemption, and the quiet consequences of choices made in moments of pressure, reminding the world that behind every athlete's smile lies a fragile and very human story. Number 13. Don Baylor. On August 7, 2017, the baseball world lost a man remembered not only for his powerful swing but also for his remarkable strength of spirit. Don Baylor passed away in Austin, Texas, at the age of 68 after a long battle with multiple myeloma, a rare form of cancer often linked to years of stress and unhealthy habits. His passing left behind a legacy of leadership, resilience, and compassion that extended far beyond the baseball field. Born in Austin, Baylor became one of the first African-American athletes to break through the racial barriers of Texas high school sports in the 1960s. He carried that same determination into his professional career, debuting with the Baltimore Orioles before becoming a feared hitter and respected teammate with several teams, including the California Angels and the New York Yankees. Known for crowding the plate, he led the league in being hit by pitches multiple times, a symbol of his fearlessness and his willingness to endure pain for victory. Behind the scenes, Baylor was known as a man of deep focus, but also deep pressure. The demands of constant competition, travel, and leadership weighed heavily on him. Though he was admired for his calm demeanor, friends often said he carried his stress quietly, internalizing the emotional strain of decades in the sport. In those years, smoking and chewing tobacco were still part of baseball culture, and like many of his peers, Baylor used them as coping tools during long seasons. When his playing career ended, Baylor moved into coaching and managing, earning respect for his ability to motivate younger players. He became Manager of the Year in 1995 with the Colorado Rockies and later served as a hitting coach for several teams. Yet even in those successful years, the habits and stress of his earlier life had already taken their toll. In 2013, he was diagnosed with cancer. He faced the disease head-on, with the same discipline that had carried him through decades of challenges. On that August morning in 2017, surrounded by family, Don Baylor's long fight came to an end. Teams across Major League Baseball held moments of silence in his memory. Teammates and players he had mentored spoke of his kindness and his strength. Don Baylor's story remains a testament to courage and endurance. But it also stands as a quiet reminder that even the toughest hearts can be worn down by years of pressure and the hidden cost of old habits. Number 14. Rod Beck. On June 23, 2007, baseball fans woke to heartbreaking news. Rod Beck, one of the game's most beloved relief pitchers, was found dead at his home in Phoenix, Arizona. He was only 38 years old. His sudden passing stunned those who knew him as the man with the fierce mustache, the booming laugh, and the heart of gold. Behind that larger-than-life image, however, was a man worn down by years of stress, personal battles, and the quiet damage of habits that followed him throughout his career. Rod Beck, affectionately known as Shooter, was a fan favorite everywhere he played. From the San Francisco Giants to the Chicago Cubs and later the Boston Red Sox, his fiery competitiveness made him a hero on the mound. He was the kind of pitcher who thrived under pressure, often asked to close games when everything was on the line. Crowds loved his intensity, his old-school toughness, and his loyalty to teammates. But life as a closer came with its own kind of strain. Every outing carried the weight of expectation, every mistake replayed endlessly in his mind. To cope with the endless tension of professional sports, Beck, like many players of his time, turned to smoking and other comforting routines to unwind. Teammates often joked about the haze of cigarette smoke that followed him in the locker room. It became part of his image, a rugged symbol of old baseball grit. Yet over the years, those habits began to take their toll. The stress of competition, injuries, and personal struggles outside the game wore him down. After his playing career ended, the transition to normal life proved harder than he had ever imagined. Friends said that in his final years, Beck was kind and generous, often helping younger players and fans. He tried to rebuild his health and stability, but the effects of long-term stress and years of unhealthy living left him vulnerable. On that June morning in 2007, the world lost more than an athlete. It lost a man whose humanity shone through his flaws, whose strength masked deep exhaustion. When the news spread, fans left flowers and notes outside the stadiums where he once played. They remembered not only his saves but his smile, his humor, and his heart. Rod Beck's story stands as both a celebration of courage and a warning about the unseen toll that pressure and old habits can take on even the strongest spirits. Number 15. Jim Leyritz. On December 28, 2010, former Major League catcher and World Series hero Jim Leyritz faced a turning point that would change his life forever. That night in Florida, a tragic car accident left one person dead and Leyritz's life spiraling into years of legal battles, emotional distress, and deep regret. Though he survived physically, the incident marked the beginning of a long decline in both his public image and his health, driven by years of stress, anxiety, and unhealthy coping habits that included heavy smoking and sleepless nights. Jim Leyritz had been a celebrated player throughout the 1990s. Known for his clutch home runs with the New York Yankees, he played a key role in helping his team capture championship glory. His fearless confidence made him a fan favorite, but that same intensity often carried a heavy price. The life of a professional athlete meant endless travel, public scrutiny, and constant pressure to perform. Off the field, Leyritz struggled to adjust once the cheering stopped. The quiet after retirement brought loneliness and a sense of loss he had never prepared for. As the years passed, he found himself trapped between fading fame and lingering emotional turmoil. Friends described him as restless, often unable to sleep, relying on cigarettes to calm his nerves. The stress of public attention after the accident only worsened his health. His once strong and athletic frame began to weaken under the weight of tension and exhaustion. By his early 50s, he had already suffered several medical scares tied to heart strain and respiratory issues. Though Leyritz avoided prison after years of court proceedings, the mental toll never lifted. He withdrew from public life, focusing on quiet reflection and mentoring younger athletes about the dangers of unmanaged stress. Those who met him later in life said he had grown softer, more thoughtful, and more aware of how quickly life can change. Jim Leyritz's story is not just one of triumph and downfall. It is a story of survival and the invisible damage that pressure, anxiety, and old habits can cause when ignored. His journey serves as a reminder that even heroes must take care of the body and mind that carry them through fame. Thank you for watching. If you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe, take care of yourself, and see you in the next video.